Elliot Mulligan spoke to Chris White, the Conservative candidate.
Basically, thank you for agreeing to do the interview, Chris, today. That's very kind of you. I'm going to open with a fairly simple question. Why should the people of Warwick and Leamington re-elect you as their MP on June the
8th? Thanks for the start question. I was first elected to stand as the candidate for Warwick and Leamington in 2002, which seems like a considerably long time ago. Thought the 2005 election wasn't successful, but pleased to be elected in 2010. And from 2010, as the Member of Parliament for Warwick and Leamington, I think I and the party have achieved a great deal. The Conservatives have achieved a great deal and done a great deal locally, whether you're talking about Friends of Warwick Station and making sure that that's looking beautiful with plants and getting volunteers involved, to issues like Vitsu and a new factory being placed on the one of the major access routes into Leamington, which will provide employment and apprenticeships and a place where we're going to be making things again, going back to our heritage and our roots. In terms of things like our colleges, in terms of our schools, and the fact that we really do have a lot of success here. We've seen unemployment fall since 2010 by something remarkable, in terms of 73%. I think a lot of things are going really well. We've seen things like Jaguar Land Rover doing a great job locally, but also things that I've been involved in, and whether it's being a member of the International Development Select Committee, whether it's being a member of the BEIS, Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Select Committee, speaking on behalf of the Midlands in Parliament, having lots of different interests that I hope not only promote the local area, but make sure that we are getting the investment here locally, making sure that we're joining up the dots with all the different organisations which I've built strong relationships with. Always more to do.
So you've mentioned a lot of things there. What would you say is your proudest moment as an MP over the past 7 years?
I think
Tricky question.
It's difficult. I think the one thing that I will remember, I suppose, whatever happens, it will be speaking. I was chair of the all-party manufacturing group, and one of the people who attended the meeting was the managing director of Vitsu, and I left the meeting. He'd said to me at the meeting, he said, I cannot get one more cardboard box in my factory in London. And I sort of forgot about the conversation. I went back to my office, and a couple of hours later I said, have you ever thought of moving to Leamington? And he said, well, obviously. He said, no, I hadn't. I hadn't actually crossed his mind. But I said to him, what about if I gave you a call in a couple of months' time? And he said, yeah, sure, do that. So I'd called him again and invited him up. I showed him the parade, and I remember it being a fantastic summer's day, and what's not to like about Leamington when it's the sun's shining.
Very true, yeah.
You see the parks looking absolutely beautiful. We went for lunch, we toured the area, and we visited the castle. We saw the world from the top of the castle. And I took him to see one of our local organisations, Motion House, a dance company, and always an idea to take a manufacturer to see a dance company. It's not always what they work closely with. And he leaned over to me and said, this is what we always do. Summer holidays we go to France to see dance. So from that conversation and from that day, sort of a number of years later, we're now seeing that factory is being built. And I suppose that's what does an MP worry about? Things like employment, things like skills, making change, encouraging investment. Things like that I'm really, really proud of.
Okay, so you were first elected as an MP in 2010 with a majority of just over 3,000.
First elected.
And then you increased that majority in 2015 to over 6,000. So in your opinion, what would you say, why do you think that majority increased?
I treat this job every day as though it's the first day. I give it my absolute dedication, commitment. I recognise the importance of the role, the significance of the role that I've been given. I never feel anything but humility about this role. I feel totally privileged to do that, and I work every day on some other initiative or project. As I said, bringing people together, looking at new initiatives, thinking about new projects, thinking about what could make a difference locally. I like to walk about a lot. I like to meet people in the street. I volunteer in different things. I see different people all the time. There are lots of different, it's working with the local authorities, working with the police. I can, I'm proud to say that I'm the only person, like any other MP, who's been able to visit every single school in the constituency and to understand what our education system is about and help where we can. Okay,
that's good. So you became the Social Value Ambassador in 2013 after playing a pivotal role in the introduction of the Social Value Act. So what did you achieve in this role?
Well, I suppose it's going back a step,
yes,
which was the private members bill, which not everybody who's normal would necessarily relate to what a private members bill is. I mean, very early days in being a member of Parliament, we all sign a big book that and that, like most of things in Parliament, is a ballot.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky to be. I think Labour got the first ticket, I got the second ticket, I got the third ticket, Liberals got and I was able to make a piece of legislation which, based on my experience as a local councillor, based on my experience as a candidate, volunteering with different groups, I could see that there's the issue of procurement, which generally it doesn't inspire excitement or interest.
Yeah.
Procurement is quite a dull thing, but you can do some very exciting things with procurement. The Social Value Act was designed to give commissioners, whether a national government or local government level, duty to consider the social value element of a piece of work. So the economic value, the social value, the environmental aspects of that. And that sort of small piece of legislation, which I was very pleased to be helped with by right across the chamber. Hazel Blears worked very closely, very well known, highly respected Labour member, helped to make this get across the line. And they very, very rarely do private members' bills become legislation. I remember department by department that has to sort of agree with this legislation. So everything, it's on a Friday. You need people to turn up. And basically, you constituents want their members of Parliament to be accessible in their constituencies on a Friday. So the issue was to what did I achieve as the ambassador? Well, I had the ambassadorial, very grand title, for quite a brief period of time because I voted against the government on a couple of issues.
Yes, I was going to say, do you regret voting against the government on those issues? Was it Syria in particular?
Do I ever regret voting against the government? I can assure you that you do take votes seriously. You do have to come to a judgment based on many, many issues. And when you decide to vote against the government, it's not something that you probably wish you'd gone back on.
Yes.
And in terms of the Syria vote, which you refer to, I would have done. At that time, it was the right and proper thing to do. And if the consequence was to no longer be the social value ambassador, okay, I could still sleep at night. I could live with that. And I just, you're sorry. My answer is probably longer than you wish, but
no, of course not.
You did ask what was achieved. Well, we have. There has been a review of a private members' bill, a review of the Social Value Act. Many stakeholders took part in that review. The very fact that it was reviewed is a signal that this act was being taken seriously. A large number of councils have adopted the principles and the philosophy and the culture behind the act. That's something that I can be proud of.
Yes.
It's changed a way of thinking. You probably, as a student newspaper, you've heard John Lewis probably quite a lot in the last months and days. But how businesses work, how local authorities work. The idea that just because something is the cheapest doesn't mean it is necessarily the best. If an organisation, charity wants to say that they're going to have, more apprenticeships, more young people, take on more young people, provide work for people with mental health issues. These are good aspects of a tender. It's not just that we can do it the cheapest. We can also provide these other benefits.
Okay, that's very interesting actually. So we're going to have to move on to Brexit because it is the big issue in politics at the moment. So even though Warwick voted 59% to remain, you still voted in favour of the UK leaving the EU in Parliament. So what made you have a sudden change of heart?
I think you've, if you don't mind me saying so, I think you've framed the question a little unfairly.
Okay.
I suppose you're a university that's also represented by Coventry. It's also, you will also have students that come from Birmingham. Warwick and Leamington or Warwick District, to be absolutely accurate, was the only district in the whole of the West Midlands that voted to remain. And I think there is a sort of narrative that you voted with the party. We just discussed about voting against the government. The idea that whether I'm sure your students or your viewers, your listeners will look at quotes by Churchill or look at Edmund Burke and the definition of what an MP should be. And I think I voted strongly. I voted to remain. I campaigned to remain, but the country didn't.
Okay.
The country voted a different way, and I think sometimes when how do we want our politicians to make their decisions? Is it because I have one argument has the bigger post bag than the other argument? Do I listen to the noisiest people? Do I go into Warwick Marketplace? Do I sit and ask how many people on each issue? Do people make a judgment, and I just go to Parliament with that? And the idea I was going to go, the speaker stands up and like some big American convention, Warwick and Leamington. What does Warwick and Leamington? Warwick and Leamington says, nay. It does not work like that. There are so many other considerations like stability, considerations like democracy, considerations like we have made a decision. How are we going to move forward to the best of our ability? What am I bothered about in Warwick and Leamington? I'm bothered about jobs. I'm bothered about investment. I'm bothered about our universities, our research, development. How are we going to make sure that is going to be strong, that we're going to have continuity, that is going to grow, that this area that I'm more concerned about, parochially than any other area in the country, is continuing to succeed. It's continuing to have the best schools, the best universities, the best colleges. It's got the greatest fall in unemployment. This is, our hospital is a model for others to look at, in the rest of the country. These are things that we can be proud of.
Okay.
We now need to move forward. I get the emails that come through, the Twitter messages, the Facebook messages. So you rolled over, you've done this. Not least if half of the people that were writing to me now have been out on the campaign. If half of the people who have been out in the country were out on the campaign, you wouldn't be asking me this question now. Perhaps.
Very fair. How do you plan on best representing the 59% of those in Warwick who voted to remain in the EU? How do you plan on representing
to do what I have been doing, to continue to make sure that when Vitsu is looking for a new place to work, they come here. When Ubisoft is looking for somewhere to start building their infrastructure in terms of video games, they come here. When Tata is putting their European headquarters, where do they think of? They come to Warwick. Where does new investment happen? How do we get the best graduates coming to and undergraduates coming to our university? How do we encourage people to live here? How do we make sure you may think this is trivial, but how do we make sure we have the festivals happening, the food festivals, the folk festivals,
Yeah.
Warwickshire Pride, all these things that we can celebrate and continue to celebrate. And I think we can either, there are only two things that are ever going to happen. Things are going to get better and things are going to get worse. We can be optimistic or we can be pessimistic. This is about our future, and I will endeavour to do to my best of my ability to make sure that Warwick and Leamington's voice on whatever issue is heard within Parliament. We've got to be, strong, work together, be proud of what we've achieved, and unfortunately, whatever people say, there is not going to be another referendum.
Yeah.
The referendum was not, and no one told me until after the votes were counted that apparently this was advisory.
Yes.
That the great British public were advising their MPs what to do. And you chuckle, and I think sometimes we have to be realistic about the way we go ahead.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so we can bring the Brexit to an end there, and we can move closer home to domestic issues. So, since 2010, the number of people registering as homeless in Warwick and Leamington has increased by 132%, and that's according to a survey carried out by Warwick District Council last year, and that's more than 29% more than the national average. So what do you plan on doing to combat this issue of homelessness in Warwick and Leamington?
I think there's a number of things that have been done. I think the government is putting in additional funding into homelessness. I think that it is important that we look at the role of our local authorities. I think the government is sometimes remote when you talk about those figures, and we need to address it. I think. But making sure that our local authorities, whether it's the county or the district, are working together to recognise, to support, to make sure that intervention, which is possibly the way we address the issue of homelessness, whether we can work with organisations which talk about drug and alcohol misuse, whether we look at ex-servicemen, how we help those people, so look after those people. But I do think I probably will be criticised for saying this, but it is a societal issue. It's something that we all have a role to play, whether it's our churches, whether it's our local authorities, whether it's our members of Parliament. We cannot just say that this is for government to sort out, and how we make sure that I don't know whether you do similar things. I'm sure you do. I know many students do volunteer for things like Nightlight. It's something that I do on a sort of once or twice a year to be out on the steps of All Saints Church talking to people and say, what are the issues you face? What is the provision? What are your needs? Okay,
but so you say this, but there's been severe cuts to local homeless shelters. There've been 3 hostels closed last year, and that's reduced the number of beds from 120 to 57. So are there any plans to reopen some other hostels? Or
I think this has got to be a long-term plan. I think one of the things I am personally incredibly supportive of is we have a county council who are responsible for some of the closures that you just talked about. We have a district council that has to help with solving some of these problems. In my view, it would be so much better, and this is probably the answer to a lot of local issues, is to have a unitary authority where the same authority it understands the problem as well as spends the money. And I think having that approach, which would not have such a dividing line, whether a county council is making these decisions, a district council is having to pick up the pieces. We shouldn't have that divide. Okay.
So we'll move on to sort of more issues that are focused on students, because this is for the radio at Warwick. So going around, I've talked to a lot of people who say they've decided not to vote in this general election because there's been too many in the past. And so what would you say to someone?
Too many general elections?
So
crazy.
So what would you say to someone who's decided not to vote in this general election?
I think it's a great shame. I think it's a sort of a failure in terms of politicians that we we're not seen as accessible. We're not seen as being, somebody who, I can understand if somebody communicates with a politician and they're not making, they're not responding, or they're not addressing concerns, some of which you've raised in this conversation.
Uh-huh.
I do think we have a responsibility. I think it is you can't get away from the fact that people have died for the right to vote. I think that often people say both parties are very similar. What's the difference? I'm not in this interview going to say anything derogatory about any other party, because I think that is one thing that puts people off politics.
It's petty infighting.
Or the only thing I would say is I think there is quite a lot of difference between the parties at this particular election.
Okay, so if there's a lot of difference, why should 18 to 25-year-olds watching this interview, why should they vote for you?
This is an interesting question. 18 to 25-year-olds, believe it or not, are quite similar to the rest of the population. 18 to 25-year-olds want there to be jobs. They want to know that their family has good healthcare. They want to know that they have a good place. Education is strong and will give them the skills for the future. They want to know that they can be safe when they go out at night. They want to know that they can buy properties and they can be part of society. So I don't see an 18 to 25-year-old being that different. It may be a naive thing for me to say, but I think an 18 to 25-year-old is very much more about shaping the future.
Okay.
And I think that is a reason, if there is no other, for people to see that they can be part of a vision. Having or voting is having a say in how this country is governed.
Okay, and so another quite big issue for students is tuition fees, and particularly the recent scrapping of the maintenance grant and the latest increase in tuition fees under a Conservative government. So would you say you're not worried about local students in Warwick and Leamington being priced out of the market, to say? Warwick and Leamington, or Warwick University students,
I just would like to put on record how thrilled that I am that you have adopted Leamington very much as part of your community, part of your heartland, and I think I know the figures. You provide something. It's great having you about, but it's also great the contribution you make to our local economy. Are you being priced out of the market? We're not seeing that trend. For the first time ever, we have more than 500,000 young people at university. We are seeing, despite all claims to the contrary, more people from disadvantaged backgrounds going to university than ever before. I think we do need to recognise that that it's not until people are earning £21,000 that you're being asked to pay something back. Okay. I'm sure the figures, I'm not sure of the most recent figures, but being a graduate now is going to earn you something in a region of 100,000 more over your lifetime than somebody who hasn't had that opportunity. And I think somewhere that needs to be taken into account. We also need, the world is far more competitive now than it ever has been, and it is only going to go in one direction. We need to make sure that our university provision is better than anywhere else in the world. The only way we can do that is fund it, and fund it properly. Okay, brilliant. So, final question. If you cast your minds forwards to June the 8th, the night of June the 8th, the morning of June the 9th, if you're re-elected as the MP for Warwick and Leamington, what would be the thing that you'd most want to achieve in the next 5 years? In the next 5 years, I think I want to see Warwick and Leamington develop even further into a place where we are a society that works well together. We are a strong community. We are seen as an example, as a constituency, as an example in the Midlands and the country for manufacturing, for creative industries, for our student experience, for our healthcare. to see all these issues develop, to see us just, how our communities work together. All these things that we can develop and develop and develop on. More people volunteering, more young people getting involved in festivals, more young people enjoying the experience that is Warwick and Leamington. And I suppose the test of that will be to see more of your colleagues staying here when you've finished your degrees.
Okay, well that's brilliant. Thank you very much for the interview, Chris.
Thank you.